Alright guys, TacticalRab again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. Big rumour emerging overnight as to exactly why Ghosty and OpTic did not work out at the end of the season, and the reason why that when the free agency period opens tonight, it is highly unlikely Ghosty will be brought back into the starting team. Is there any truth in this? We're going to dive into it in the coming minutes. Very much intrigued to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. Clearly Elon does not realise that it's CDL Rostermania right now, and we need to be seeing all the tweets per day. If you guys aren't familiar, Elon, I don't know exactly why Twitter have done this. There's been various theories as to why. It's a temporary thing, apparently, to restrict the amount of tweets people are able to view, and there might be some ways around it, but, you know, we'll try our best, and that's why, as Thieves say, you know, rate limit exceeded retail roster for the 2024 season. There's nothing behind this image, right, if you guys were, you know, unclear on that one, and obviously OpTic have been doing the same, you know, playing the same game over the last day or so. But tonight is officially the start, 11:59 PM Pacific time, is the end of the 2023 CDL season, and 1 minute later is the beginning of the 2024 CDL season, at which point teams can sign players. Many teams probably know what they're doing at this point. We're still not fully sure. The latest rumour that we've heard on OpTic technically was that Drazah, Envoy, Dashy, Shotzzy thing a while ago. Now we've heard, okay, maybe FaZe get Drazah, and if that's the case, then maybe OpTic should get Pred. Do they get Envoy anyway and go for, like, you know, 3 SMGs? Let's just make it work. I don't mind that idea at all. Or they go for another flex, potentially try and get Drazah or get Scrappy, maybe that's unlikely, or get Sib, or bring Ghosty back, and we'll discuss the Ghosty thing here in a second. Before we get to that, though, wanted to mention quickly the HCS watch party. So the HCS Arlington event and OpTic bowed out to the tournament last night. They, after winning the World Championship, pretty much what happens, you know how it goes. A team dominates, as OpTic were doing, and all the other teams make changes to try and become the dominant force themselves, or really to just dethrone the current dominant team. And OpTic, they go down to Space Station, who really have been their hard counter for, you know, the last couple of tourneys they've played, and then they lost the Game 5 Slayer to Quadrant here, so they advanced in the tournament. They, you know, OpTic fall out top 6 here on the Saturday, which is definitely pretty surprising. So it's FaZe Space Station in the upper finals, Quadrant Sentinels in the lower semis, and yeah, OpTic out top 6 in this one. Formal not happy about this, as he says the highs are the highs, the lows are low, we move forward. Do wonder whether OpTic will consider changes now to the Halo team. It's difficult to say what you would even do there, right, because their team is pretty stacked. Formal, Lucid, Trippy, APG, you know, maybe they'll find APG as the odd man out and we'll decide to make a change, or maybe Formal comes back to COD, maybe if we go back to Jetpacks, I don't know, but definitely an interesting storyline to keep your eyes on there. We've also got to mention this, so Pred has been doing, I've got to say, some prime Rostermania baiting. He went from Texas to Miami, I believe, to start, or maybe he went somewhere else before Miami, but he was in Miami for a while. Now, no one really expects him to join Florida, do they? Then he went to New York and he was putting all over his Insta stories and stuff that he was over there, and now he's out in LA, and coincidentally, just around, he knows what he's doing, obviously, here. So he puts this on his story, Beverly Hills, California, and of course, it's conveniently just around the corner from the 100 Thieves Cash App compound. So I'm pretty sure Pred knows what he's doing in terms of baiting all the interest in this one, and I do wonder, because, look, there's 3 targets for Pred, and even if Pred really wanted to join New York, like, I don't see a world in which that makes any sense anyway. They'll keep Hydra and Kismet for sure, unless something crazy happens over there and Kismet decides not to sign a new deal or something. But anyway, it's going to be OpTic, Thieves, or FaZe really for Pred, and it could still be any of those teams. I would say right now that OpTic are probably the most likely, just on what we've heard with Drazah potentially going somewhere else, Envoy at least entertaining discussions with Ultra as kind of a backup option. If maybe FaZe, maybe they try and get Envoy as well. Like, who really knows what's going to happen? We don't actually have, usually at this point in the Rostermania period, Kroner's come out with an article detailing all the 12 teams and what they're going to be. I like not knowing. Like, okay, I could probably ask some people and find out some more intel, but I enjoy just not really knowing what's going on and just seeing things develop as they are developing. And that's one of the reasons why we're going to discuss what we're about to get into, and that is OpTic's drama potentially towards the end of last year between Ghosty and Dashy. So look, what quite often happens after the World Championship ends, or really any tournament after a disappointing result, is that the player that's going to get dropped from the team often won't hear much from the rest of the players. And this is how it is, you know, young guys in these Call of Duty environments, you know, in terms of having a frank discussion and conversation with the players in terms of what they want to do with the roster doesn't often happen. Quite often it's like they're just going to ghost you. And this happened to Dashy, I'm pretty sure, after Major 1. Dashy, after Major 1, he saw Scump and Shotzzy and iLLeY or whatever having a chat with Rambo after the event, and he was like, yeah, I'm going to be dropped here because they haven't told me anything. And sure enough, they did drop Dashy. And apparently, the same thing happened to Ghosty after Champs. I actually did hear about this shortly after the World Championship, which made me think, alright, well, there's no way Ghosty's coming back, but this might be for more reasons than just one. So if it was just the OpTic Intel account saying this, I wouldn't be talking about it, because this guy the other day, the Intel OpTic account, you remember he did the tweet about Karma not returning to a coach, and then Karma just said on Twitch, like, you know, what's this guy playing at, basically, like, I am coming back type thing, but doesn't mean that he's always wrong necessarily. So there were some discussions here in the replies about what the OpTic team is going to be. Do you try and get Sib? You know, do you bring Ghosty back? And we discussed that last night. And also apparently on this Halo watch party yesterday, I didn't see any clips of this, but supposedly Scump and those guys were kind of saying like, I wish we could just announce the roster now, which kind of implies they know what it's going to be, which makes it unlikely to me that it's going to be Scrappy, because surely if that had been the case, like, there'd be more negotiations ongoing there. So probably they're going to go down a different route with potentially one of the carousels of, you know, Drazah, Envoy, Preds, two of those three, maybe Sib as well, and that's been thrown into the discussion as well. But Intel OpTic says Dan will never play with Brandon again, and then he goes on to say it's just the truth. Dan, of course, Ghosty and OpTic didn't end well, and Dan and Brandon didn't get along. Of course, Ghosty and Dashy, as told to me by multiple credible people. That's what happens when you ghost a player from Champ Saturday onwards. Now, as I say, if it was just this tweet, I wouldn't be talking about it. But Ronnie at CDL Scum Intel, who has been pretty much bang on the money so far in this Rostermania period, pretty much confirms that at least part of this is true. He says on Reddit here, I'm not saying anything about the player relationships, but I did hear none of them spoke to him after Saturday, which, look, as I say, this happens quite often with teams, and seemingly especially OpTic actually, for whatever reason. Maybe it's just because they're more in the spotlight, and it happens with other teams as well. But when players, you know, a tournament ends, Ghosty probably knew that it was unlikely he was going to be kept around after the last two events, top 12, top 6, didn't go to plan, and maybe at that point the relationships there also weren't going particularly well. So very interesting to see. And also we got this from Fivehead maybe. Now I don't know if this guy's got any intel. It's pure trust me bro from his perspective here, but I thought it was at least worth mentioning because he says that he knows a couple of people close to the scene. One's a GM in the Pro League, one's a top am, and he's heard from, you know, those multiple sources that he was also told the above reasons that Ghosty and Dashy just didn't get on, and that's why they've decided to move on. And I will say that when they announced this, Ghosty being released, it seems very final, right? It's, you know, we wish you the best. There's really no entertaining the idea here, theoretically, that he'll be coming back. And also, I'm pretty sure Ronnie said on Reddit the other day that he reckons there's approximately a 1% chance that Ghosty returns. Despite the fact that looking at all the flex options, Ghosty, especially given what he did with OpTic, is theoretically one of the more favourable ones. So let's say you can't get Drazah because he's going to FaZe, and you can't get Scrappy because he's stuck on Toronto, just theoretically. Like, are there better, we talked about it last night, are there better options than Ghosty? Maybe not. But if the team chemistry just straight up doesn't work, then obviously you are going to move on. And it's pretty interesting. So Ghosty is, I think, a great kid. I mean, we've talked about his eavesdrop episode and stuff like that. I know a lot of people really resonated with Ghosty and the story that he had and getting into this point in the Pro League. But he's also a very vocal and big personality, right? Some of the stuff he was saying after their matches in the compound right here, like, you know, on the radio, stuff like this. And also some of the clips that I think I've even shared on the channel over the past couple of months. This one, you know, rage quitting Pro 8. And if you guys have ever watched his streams, you'll know that his personality for some people could be considered a bit abrasive. You know, he's a big rager, right? Like, you know, he plays 8s or he plays ranked and everything. Like, you know, he rages a fair bit. And I know there's been stories, I think even himself has talked about this, when he was in challenges playing with certain players and, you know, not getting on with certain teammates and friction emerging behind the scenes and this type of stuff. So Ghosty's just one of those personalities where, you know, great player, clearly, and has a bright future, very smart kid, but isn't always going to work with certain individuals. And obviously, if you look at Dashy, he also has a history when playing with these, like, abrasive type characters, or just big personalities that stand by their opinions. You can look at maybe a Slasher from back in the OGLA days that he clearly didn't get on, and I can't imagine a team together again, and even Rambo from a coaching perspective in recent times. Dashy's had, you know, issues with those type of players, and maybe it's the same story here again. That's certainly what the rumor says, that Ghosty and Dashy just straight up didn't get on. Now, of course, Ghosty, like, Dashy spoke to Haggy and he spoke to other people about getting Ghosty initially, and clearly it worked in improving their roster. But if the chemistry wasn't there, and we know that Dashy's not going anywhere, that's just how it is. And I also just looked up here out of interest how often they've interacted on social media, and there's only one tweet ever that Dashy's actually done to Ghosty. Like, he's never replied to any of his tweets or anything, so I think it does imply that those two guys had a bit of friction going on. And it also does make me wonder, wonder, like, because Dashy, they're going to stick by him, right? He's their guy. They dropped him a couple of times now. Hex has made it very clear that Dashy's going to be there for the long haul, and he's a massive personality in COD. But many people are pointing out that it's an interestingly, potentially consistent trend that Dashy with certain personalities just don't get on, and they end up finding themselves out of the team and Dashy stays. And maybe that's for a good reason, but, you know, Pred also is a guy, let's say they do get Pred. Pred's a guy that's big on accountability, right? And maybe one of the reasons why I might expect them to get Envoy is because I'm pretty sure Envoy and Dashy, you know, did get on pretty well during the Cold War days, and maybe they feel like there's more work to be done on that front. But let's say they get Pred, like, you know, we've seen the episodes from Pred when he's talking to Sib and the entire team, like, Pred is big on accountability. If people make mistakes, he wants them to get called out for it, and he's going to call you out if you are making mistakes that are going to cost them the victory, especially if they've practiced certain things behind the scenes. So I do wonder, like, how that goes, because when you're forming these rosters, it's not just about who fits the best theoretically into that particular role, but it's also about, will the personalities and the players get on well? And, you know, all the indications are saying that Ghosty and Dashy just didn't get on, and, you know, Dashy's going to be the one to stay because of his pedigree and OpTic and his raw ability being one of the highest I've ever seen in COD. So, and also the same story with this is why I bought this stupid graphic that I made up, because, you know, with Scrappy, in the same way, like, Scrappy is probably in some ways not too dissimilar to Ghosty. Like, would he get on with Dashy as an AR combination? Like, would it eventually collapse in a similar way to it might have done here with Ghosty? Who knows? Of course, it's all speculation, we don't know, but a lot of the stories actually do add up when you look at it in a bit more detail. So I think it's very interesting. Just also wanted to share for you guys what Octane had to say on Ghosty's future, and he says, like, yeah, look, after making the tweet they did releasing Ghosty, it's a very slim chance they would bring him back, and kind of says what Ghosty should try and do for the future.
Where do you see Dan going? Do you think OpTic would re-sign him? I think he got dropped. I don't think OpTic's going to walk that back. Where, in terms of where I see him going, the next logical step for Dan or any player in his position would be find people that he wants to play with, whether that be a duo or a trio. So if, like, I don't know, Dan and Austin together, for example, then they could shop around for sub duos, and, like, the team is less important and the players are. So if I'm Dan, I'm DMing people trying to figure out who I want to play with. I'm not necessarily worried about the org right now because there are infinity spots open towards the bottom part of the league. Minnesota, Boston, Seattle, wherever. There's a lot of organization things that you can do. If I'm Dan, I'm worried about finding someone to play with right now. So, like, again, he could just, like, go grab Austin, find subs, stuff like that.
So it's going to be very interesting to see tonight whether we do get any further rumours and indications. I think really it's going to be the top teams as usual that sort themselves out first. OpTic will get their team sorted. FaZe will get their team sorted. Thieves will probably get their team sorted within short order as well, as will, you'd think, Toronto. Subliners we'd expect to stick. And then after that, it's all going to be chaos over the coming weeks. But tonight is going to be big, as will be this entire week. So very much enjoy to hear your perspective in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care. And I'll see you next time.